This week on the Unabated podcast, former bookmaker Aaron Kessler joins the show to talk about some of the challenges of booking a tournament like March Madness and give you some tips on how you should bet it. It's a great show. Let's get to it.
Unabated. That's the new word, unabated.
Hello, everyone, and welcome on into the Unabated podcast. I'm Thomas Viola, and joining me, as always, Mr. Unabated himself, Captain Jack Andrews. And Jack, we have a fantastic episode to get to today. It is college basketball season, and we are going to be talking college hoops with, in my opinion, one of the smartest minds in college basketball. He was a bookmaker for around 20 years at the Golden Nugget, and now is doing his own thing. Aaron Kessler is going to be joining us today. But before we get to that interview, we're not circles back, and no shade to Rob and those guys and the great work they do, but the soup du jour on gambling Twitter these days, which is just absolutely completely out of pocket. Like, we were behaving badly before the Super Bowl, and now that football's over, it's just going to continue to get worse. I dread the summer doldrums, but oh my God, a 7-hour Spaces last night from Elf. I feel like if you're listening to 7 hours of that content, call the number. You have a bigger problem than the betting. Like, who the hell cares this much?
Yeah, well, apparently a bro does, because everyone addresses bro. I'm not sure who bro is, but every sentence ends with bro, bro.
Bro.
Yeah, it's rough. I've popped in a few times. I can't make more than 20 minutes or so. Look, guys, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people are doing, what they're saying, how they're acting. All that really matters is yourself, how you're approaching things. If you're trying to be a better sports bettor, you focus on yourself. Don't focus on what somebody else is doing or what somebody else is scamming or trying to sell somebody. Just focus on yourself, guys.
Yeah. Either that or maybe the next unabated content venture should be Real Housewives of Sports Betting, and we just turn it all into a reality show at this point.
Yeah. And I think some of these guys, like, the drama is more fun for them than the grind of sports betting.
Yeah.
You know, okay, that's fine. I guess I just Spaces is so incomplete. Like, it's only audio. I want to see what these people are looking like. Elf sometimes turns on his camera and we can see him, but I want to see what some of these other guys look like. It needs to be like a Zoom or a FaceTime type thing.
I think the popularity would greatly plummet if we did that.
Well, oh, I mean, look, you know, this we're not meant for visual medium. I get that. Some people just like watching stuff on YouTube, but no, it's interesting. I hope the fad dies out, though, honestly.
Yeah, it has been absolutely absurd. Okay, that is our 2 minutes for the entire year on gambling Twitter. Let's get into it here. We have Aaron Kessler. He ran the books at the Golden Nugget for many years, and he is the college basketball guy. Very excited to talk to him about the challenges of booking college hoops, booking the tournament, and getting into a little bit of betting and talking about some angles that he likes to shoot when it comes to this time of year. Let's do it.
Let's get to it.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome on into the show. He was a bookmaker for more than 20 years in the industry and still going strong. Aaron Kessler. Aaron, great to have you back on, my friend.
Always a pleasure to be here with the gang.
Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It is, of course, college basketball season, and quite frankly, you are one of the sharpest people I know in general, but especially when it comes to college hoops. We're here today to talk a little bit about your time as a bookmaker, the difficulties that come with college basketball and trying to defend all of that surface area. And so my first question for you is, with a field this large, how is it that you were defending all of this surface area as a bookmaker? How did you come into work every day figuring out how you were going to set lines for all of these games, for all of these teams, from the obvious Dukes and Kentuckys all the way down to UMBC?
You know, the part that really helps is being able to set overnights and getting all the prep work done, making sure your scheduling is ready, and making sure that you're able to focus as much on the lines as possible. You know, I'd always make sure I had some help so I could focus on the college board. And even then, you know, mistakes get made. But you've got the screen going, you can stay up on top of a lot of things, and you can throw a couple opinions there as well. You know, if you've got a feeling on a game, you owe it to yourself to say, hey, this is why I think the number's a bit off, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help us win.
Now, on a day like a Saturday in February or early March, when we have just about every team on the planet is playing, is your approach on a day like that just to open with a ballpark number that's close enough and then let the betting hammer it out? Or do you dig deep into some of those games between like Bucknell and Colgate?
Every good bookmaker that I know is also following the game as well and has a list of teams that they're watching. So if you're tracking a team, you might want to pay a little extra close attention to their game. You've always got a couple in your sights. It's like, okay, I might want to adjust this one. This team's playing right. You always got to be huge on the injury information. Twitter's going to be blowing up. You've got a couple accounts out there that are really good and make sure and tweet out all the information, and someone's going to see it. Is it going to be you? Hopefully, but someone's going to see it and they'll beat you to it. So you've got to stay on top of everything. College basketball is just a game of vigilance.
Now, how about especially when it comes to these small market teams and the smaller fields that you have to play with? Do you find yourself saying, okay, I'm going to delegate some of these mid-major teams or teams that aren't expected to get a lot of action to somebody else? Are you not giving them quite as much time as you are to the parts of the slate that you know are going to get more action from the public? Or are you just saying, you know what, the only people who are going to be trying to hit these games are sharps, and I'm just going to move the number based on the action there?
Yeah, that's a big approach there is you definitely think that's going to be largely sharp action. You're going to get people walking into the book or logging on to the book. They're going to bet Duke. They're going to bet Alabama. They're going to bet Kentucky. We know that's going to happen. When you start seeing something come in on Tennessee State, you're like, okay, I'm going to watch this. And you see it get hit again. You're like, okay, I'm going to get out of town on this. I'm going to move it as fast as possible. You don't want to be caught holding the bag because maybe you missed something. Maybe someone else knows something. There's just too many variables and there's too many teams. You can't be on top of every single one of them.
And how does college basketball change over the course of the season? When we're recording this, it's late February. We're kind of gearing up for the conference championships, and then of course all the fun of March Madness. How is right now different than how it'll be in a few weeks and how it was 2 months ago?
Right now is always a really fun time in college basketball because you get all the people who are handicapping football, spending 2 weeks playing props. And then now they're like, oh, well, time to learn about college basketball, I guess. The Sharp ecosystem learns these players in these 3 weeks that end February. That's when they're picking up all of it. And it's time that, you can do okay because they're not fully locked in yet either. They might be missing things you're not. But, they're sharp. They're tough to beat. Their models are really good. And all you can do is put the number you think it should be.
When is, in your opinion, the hardest time to be booking college basketball? Is it beginning of the season? Is it conference play? Is it the tournament?
Beginning of the season is insane because no one knows anything. I've seen in my career totals move 35 points on a game, which in any other regard seems completely absurd. I've seen it. It happened. And I remember one of the teams involved was Towson. It was opening day, and the total moved from like 122 to 157. It was insane. Everyone in the world was on the over. It kept on moving. I swear to God, that game fell like 111. Everyone got beat.
So it was a great day for you.
It wasn't too bad.
Now, when it comes to that, the beginning of the season being the most difficult part for you, that doesn't necessarily mean the inverse is true because the bettors are also dealing with the same lack of information, right?
Look, it's really tough for everybody. And yeah, is it tough for us? Despite what 95% of the people on Twitter will tell you, bookmaking is not easy. There is a skill to it. And, you always are always up against it. And I was given some great advice once. The book has every edge in their corner. The book has 11 to 10. What does the player have? And I had a real sharp guy, old guy used to come in and bet with us constantly said, you know what advantage I have over you? I can pass. So you've got guys who are looking at the entire board, and with 150 games, they're going to find something they like. So you just got to get ready to get picked over on anything you make a mistake on, anything you're off on, anything you may have missed. College basketball is a game of completeness.
I think Vinny Maiulo told me the exact same thing.
It may have been Vinny. Vinny's a great guy.
Hmm.
Dropping names all over the room here. We had John Murray on a few weeks ago, and we asked, to be honest, I tried to bait him into, is he glad that football is over? The question I asked him was, uh, what's the best thing about football being over? And I figured he'd be like, oh, we'll be done with it. And he said he loves football. He can't wait till next season. Once the football season ends, he can't wait to the next football season. Aaron, is there a similar romanticism with college basketball and you, or come a month from now, are you just ready for this to be done?
No, I love college basketball. It's one of my favorite sports. Tournament time's one of the greatest times of the year. That said, back when I was booking, it was busy season started at NFL kickoff and ended at the last game of the Final Four. And once it was over, it was time for vacation. So I always looked forward to that. Now that I'm out of it, I miss it a little bit. But, at least as a fan, it leads straight into the hockey playoffs. And the hockey playoffs lead into baseball, and baseball leads into football, and the cycle begins anew.
So now shifting some focus towards the rest of this season and what we've got going on for the rest of the way here, there are some angles that are going to start opening up at this point. In particular, things like conference tournaments and teams that maybe are already punching their tickets to the big dance. Is there anything that you, as a bettor, like to attack around this time of year when it comes to college basketball?
Yeah, one of my favorite angles is conference tournaments. If you're looking at teams that have played 4 days in a row, and there you've got your, 8 or 9 seed. It's always going to be a higher seed because if you're in a tournament that's got 4 days in a row, you've got some buys in there. If you've got a team that's playing their fourth day in a row and they're facing a team in the championship game and they're hanging around in the first half, I love to fade them in the second half. I know it's a square play, but their legs are just gone by then. And I like the seasoned team, the better team, and the more rested team just to blow them off the court in the second half.
How about in-game betting? Like, is there anything that you're particularly looking for? I mean, the basketball is itself is a game of runs, but with the college game, that can be even more exaggerated by a cold shooting team, right?
Sure, and I don't think that necessarily changes with the season. I'm always looking at teams. If I'm watching a game and I see a team is 1 for 9, I'm going to hop on. I'm going to live bet them to come back. Are they going to continue to shoot 11% from three? Maybe, but probably not. And I figure maybe that team's going to, mount up a rally. They don't need to, you have the fallacy of, oh, yeah, it's going to normalize. They're going to make 5 of their next 11. They're not, but the game shape is a little different. The other team might be pressing a little less with the lead. And I think that, if you're betting a team that's ahead, live betting, it's silly to me. I can get there. I understand why people do it, but it's not something you're going to catch me doing. I'm here to play comebacks. I'm here to play things normalizing out. I'm here to play teams that aren't performing like I think they should. But, sometimes it hits, sometimes it backfires. I got burned to hell the other day on one of them.
So with conference tournaments, often we see a situation where a team really the conference tournament doesn't really matter much in their seeding. They're either a top quadrant team or pretty much as long as they really have no chance of changing their seeding too much in the conference tournament. Do you ever fade those teams, or is there any angles with conference tournaments and kind of like a team that's mismatched?
I feel like with conference tournaments, if you win the tournament and you're in a major, you're probably going to pick up a seed line if you can win the thing. I don't think that teams going easy is something. Now, for the conspiracy theorists out there, there's always this scenario you've got, a conference. This seems to happen in the Mountain West a lot, where you've got 3 teams locked in, and a fourth team on the outside looking in makes the championship game against a team that's just straight up locked in. You're always going to have the people who say, well, the conference wants it. The refs are, going to be blowing the whistles the right way. I'm not saying I believe it. I'm not saying I don't, but money talks.
I mean, remember the NC State run a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean, the NC State run was great. We all enjoyed that. Look, we
Yeah.
all like when the big fella's in the middle.
Exactly. Now, when it comes to the actual tournament, how hard is it as a bookmaker to be taking this field of 68 teams and saying, okay, most of them have not played each other before? Are you relying on a lot of matchup basis to determine your numbers? Are you looking at conferences and how you rate them as a conference? What is it that creates a number for round one of the tournament?
So, I can speak for myself and I can speak for part of the industry. I know one thing you see around the industry is there is a site that not many people know about. It's a real hidden gem called KenPom. And I know you're going to see a lot of that, but all the players have that, all the books have that. We all know about KenPom. And, that's a great indicator, but you really have to look at some of these matchups. How have these teams played against power teams? It seems like every year, one team that comes to mind is New Mexico State. They play in the WAC, which is a weak conference, and they were coming in like every year with like a 26-3 record. And those three would be 20-point losses to mid-tier major conference teams. And every year they'd be a 12 seed and they'd disappoint. They just went on a crazy run of doing that. So yeah, you do have to look. Not all wins and losses are created equal. Obviously, you can't just go by record. I was watching ESPN the other day, and they had Oklahoma as one of the last four in the tournament. They're 4-10 in conference. You're telling me this team is getting in without running the table? Are they going to get in at 6-12? I don't care how good the SEC is. But, the small conference teams and the big conference teams, you can kind of figure out the matchup and you look at history. We know about the level of the top small conference teams. We know what a KenPom 40 looks like. We know what a KenPom 90 looks like. They are not the same, even though their records might look the same and their conference profiles may look the same. You got to get, into the weeds, look at who they've beaten, who's beaten them, by how much and where.
And when it comes to some of these games as well, is tournament time, in your opinion, the most challenging part of being a bookmaker?
No. Tournament time is great. It is not nearly as challenging as your typical Saturday. Tournament time, you have so many patterns you can follow. You know where the money's going to come in on the favorite dog split. If you've got a 6:55 Pacific game with Gonzaga against some team you've never heard of, and it's 23.5, that's closing 25, whether you like it or not.
So what is the hardest time of year for you as a bookmaker?
College basketball Saturdays are way harder. Football Saturdays are way harder. And, the tournament is great, but it's formulaic and you know how you're going to end up. You're probably going to do all right unless you get all 16 protected seeds advancing. You're going to get some upsets. There's stuff that none of us see coming, and it's going to get in there. It's going to take out all the parlays, and then you just got to not get killed on the straight bets, but you're going to be fine.
All right, let's go far into the future. For a lot of people, they already have the disappointment of Selection Sunday, their team bubbling out, and they're in the NIT or the CBI. Is there any angle to betting those secondary tournaments?
2 years ago, I would have given you a different answer to this question, because 2 years ago it was much less prevalent for a team to refuse an invitation to these. And one of my favorite angles in the period between when the NIT started seeding and when teams started opting out, I would play every 8 seed, every 7 seed in the NIT because they wanted to be there. They wanted to be hard. They wanted to play hard. The 1 and 2 seeds, they were just, oh man, we didn't make the tournament. This sucks. And just lay an egg. And you would see the 8s and 7s just stomp every year. There would always be 1 or 2. And you'd get big, big prices on them. Now, I'm not so sure I trust that. For one, you're losing the regular season automatic invite to the NIT. And you're also losing the teams that don't want to be there. 69 through 72, they're not going to the NIT anymore. They're just going home. They'll let 75 through 78 take it. They are happy to be there. So I feel like that angle is probably gone. Other than that, home teams obviously mean a lot. You always get the game where where the 2 is at the 7 for some reason because there's a scheduling conflict, and you love to play the new home team in those. But no, it's just like any other game for the most part.
Now, you also have a very, very good knack for finding long shots when it comes to college basketball. A couple years ago, you were able to pick up North Carolina at 150-1, make it all the way to the final there. This year, you've got another nice ticket that you can talk about if you would like to. What is it that goes into these teams and finding these long shots? What is it that you are looking for when you're trying to evaluate and pick out these guys that, sure enough, end up making deep tournament runs that you're picking out preseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've had a lot of fun with over the years. It's definitely dried up a lot with the transfer portal And, it's much harder to determine what a team is going to do from year to year. A lot of the preseason work is very difficult. A lot of the early season work is difficult. And now, so many people watch these that it's hard to find some stuff. I hadn't played in a couple years. I had NC at 175 to 1. Thank you. 2 years ago, obviously up 15 at halftime. That didn't go well. But yeah, I was playing around in the preseason, just looking at recruiting classes, looking at transfers. And I saw that Missouri was 0-18 in conference last year. And I said, well, I like what they're bringing in. It makes a lot of sense. There's a narrative there. 450 to 1. I'll take a shot. I threw a few bucks on them. It's substantially less than that now. Hopefully, at time of release, it's even more less than this. But yeah, this was a little bit luck. This team is better than I thought. But it was also being able to construct a narrative. I saw the pieces they brought in, the pieces they kept. And I'm a big continuity guy in college basketball. I saw they kept a lot of their players, but they brought a lot of pieces to play over them. And that's something I look for is returners plus. Bring in talent. They brought in Mark Mitchell from Duke, great player. And they brought in a couple other transfers who made sense to me from smaller colleges. And you've got Jacob Cruz coming from Ten Martin and Marquise Warwick from Northern Kentucky. These are guys who were big scorers at small schools, and they can play complementary roles here. They made a lot of sense. But yeah, one thing that you have to look at in futures, in my opinion, is you need a narrative because everyone has the numbers. We are all looking at the same projections. We are all reading the same articles before the season. So what you need is some sort of narrative. How is this team going to come together? And what can this team do that no other team can? What makes them special? Why are they going to outperform their odds?
So when you have a situation like that, like you had UNC at what was it, 175 to 1? What's your end game there? Are you hedging that as the tournament begins, as when they make the playoff? Like what was, because I'm sure you're just not holding it naked all the way to the end, right?
I'm a recreational player, Jack. Hedging's for gardeners.
All right. But no, seriously, was there any like, oh, okay, well, I'll cash in a little of this by, betting against them in this round of Elite Eight or something?
No, I mean, at prices like this, I'm not betting $1,000. I'm betting money I can afford to lose. I'm betting money I'm not going to miss that much. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm taking my shots. I'm always looking if the value is right, but if you're taking a longer shot, you're still going to have to lay a price. If you get to the final four with even like a 4 seed, you got to lay like 8 to 1, 9 to 1, 11 to 1 just to get off your position. I don't want to give up that sort of, equity. What am I going to,
Okay.
if I bet $100, what am I going to do with $1,000? I'm here to win.
All right.
Aaron only goes hard. That is the way.
Very nice. So Aaron, can we hit you up for every guy that's worked in a Vegas sports book has stories out the wazoo. Is there anything that comes to mind related to March Madness, related to maybe your time at the Golden Nugget, related to the crowds that come through there in college basketball time? I've vamped long enough. Is there a story on the tip of your tongue?
And there are so many stories, at least 12 of them out of the hundreds of stories I have are appropriate for a family podcast. Let me think. There was one year we had a bunch of parlays going to the late game. It was a Gonzaga game, and it was a bunch of parlays going to the under, which is not what you expect. So we realized we've got just miles of liability written to the under. There's 7 minutes left in the game. We need 29 points to get to the over. I'm in the back room. We've got a dry erase board. And I take out a marker and write down all the numbers from 29 to 0 on the dry erase board and start crossing them off every time someone hits a shot. And both teams went on a run, and we got there with like a solid minute and a half left. So sorry if you lost that day, players, but I liked being employed.
Now, when something like that happens, does Tony say, "Oh, great job, Aaron," or is it just like, "All right, kid, you get to keep your job"?
Always great job, Aaron.
Okay, good.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for being with us here today. We greatly appreciate the time and wish you best of luck on the tournament. I guess my final question to you there would be, does it feel, I know you missed a little bit, but does it feel a little good not having to deal with the stresses of tournament time as a bookmaker this year?
My bosses need to put their earmuffs on right now, but that Thursday and Friday, I'll be sitting on the couch. I'll have my work computer out, but I'll probably have a beer in my hand in front of the TV.
It's a very different world on this side of the counter, isn't it?
Always fun.
Once again, Aaron Kessler, a bookmaker from the Golden Nugget for, I mean, almost as long as I've been alive, Aaron. Unfortunately, as it may be. But thank you so much for joining us here today. Of course, you can find him on Twitter, always pithy, at Aaron Kessler. Nice and easy there. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back next week. But as always, best of luck and let's cash some tickets. We'll see you next time.